Welcome back, guys. We trust you've been staying safe. We just hit 200 subscribers and we thank you so much for your support so far. Kindly subscribe to the channel if you already haven't. Even before you start watching this video, help us hit 1,000 subscribers by end of Christmas this year. Thank you. Welcome back, guys. I trust you've been staying safe. Now, this case is still unfolding in Zimbabwe, Africa, and it is so mind-boggling, confusing, and honestly very twisted. In the early hours of late November into December, a woman lodged a report that her husband had passed with the police, and when investigators followed up to her house, they found that she had been staying with the corpse of her husband for several days after he had died. Why would she be doing this? And just when it was as though it couldn't get any crazier, guess what? Something else was found in the house. Something else was found in the house. A man looking very scattered, tattered, and unkempt was found inside the ceiling of the house of this woman. This story is so twisted and it will just rock you to your core. If you are ready for this ride, just buckle up and let's go. So today's story comes from Zengeze, Zimbabwe in Africa. And the woman at the center of the whole thing is called Gogo Mahlahla. Yes, I repeat, Gogo Mahlahla. That's the name of the woman here. And on a fateful day, she went to the police to lodge a complaint and file a report that her husband had died. And when the police officers accompanied her to her house to investigate and be sure and corroborate what had happened, they found a very gruesome scene where they saw that her husband had actually died several days ago, but Gogo Mahlahla was actually living with the dead corpse, or with the corpse of her husband, so to speak. And this is so twisted. This is like an extreme version of till death do us part, or even better, because, or let me say even worse, because in this case, death is not still doing them part. The woman has lost her husband and she's still staying with the corpse of the husband. That is so twisted. Now, when this news broke, the police were so flabbergasted, and they decided to engage some of the people in the neighborhood of Gogo Mahlahla who knew her to understand what would have actually triggered this, or if they could glean some information from the residents in Gogo Mahlahla's neighborhood, so to set them on a path where they can actually get to the bottom of the issue as to why a woman would have lost her husband and decide to stay with the corpse of her husband for several days after his death, before finally deciding to report to the police at the point when the corpse was actually decomposing. Now, when police engaged the residents of Gogo Mahlahla's neighborhood who knew her, this is what they said. According to them, Gogo Mahlahla's husband is somebody they knew from way back, over a decade ago, that Gogo Mahlahla and her husband got married in 1992. But after a few years of marriage, they didn't see the man again. The last time they saw him, he was in a wheelchair in the house. Afterwards, they didn't see him again. And they are now seeing him as a decomposing corpse being brought out of Gogo Mahlahla's house. According to them, Gogo Mahlahla also didn't entertain any visitors in the house. Nobody was allowed to come and visit Gogo Mahlahla. She was very repulsive towards the residents of the neighborhood, and she cut all ties with anybody she knew in the neighborhood. So practically, she didn't have any friends. Additionally, they indicated that nobody actually went in or out of Gogo Mahlahla's house. It was only Gogo Mahlahla who was actually going in and out of the house. Beside her, nobody went in, nobody went out. Now, this was really, really interesting, because how can somebody live like that, especially in Africa, where the bond between people and their community is strong, such that people visit each other, being neighbors, to check on each other and also to see how best they can support each other. So what would lead to Gogo Mahlahla behaving in this strange fashion? Well, the twist continues. Later on, it will turn out that Gogo Mahlahla and her husband got married in 1992, and apparently the man suffered a stroke afterwards. And that's how come he was wheelchair ridden, or left in the wheelchair. So he was being moved about in a wheelchair, and to the point that nobody was going in or out of the house. This was actually something that Gogo Mahlahla had enforced, because according to her, a church that she fellowships with had informed her that her family was being pursued by evil spirits, and as such, she had to take steps to protect her family and cleanse them from the evil spirits. Yes, you heard me right. She was told by her church that her family was being pursued by evil spirits, so she was taking steps to protect her family from the evil spirits. She went on to indicate that her husband did not believe in the prophecy and was never ready to accompany her to the church to receive the prophecies himself and help her work on it. It is unclear as to whether that is what led to his demise in her mind, but this was what Gogo Mahlahla said. Now, this came as a surprise, because to what end? Whether it is true or not, the man has passed, so why do you continue to keep the corpse? People began to insinuate, is she crazy? Is she demented? Or is it something else? Maybe black magic, African ritual, or whatever it is. But just when the police thought that they had met one of the twisted cases in their career, they started hearing sounds in the ceiling of Gogo Mahlahla's house. They grew curious and wondered what else was going on in the house, because obviously it sounded that somebody was lurking inside the ceiling of the house. They could hear sounds, they could hear movement, they could hear breathing. And when they spoke to whatever it was or whoever was hiding there, the person did not respond. The person did not comply either with any instructions that they shouted out at the person. So they had to decide to go into the ceiling themselves to find out who or what was there, and then take the necessary steps to mitigate the situation. Lo and behold, when they went into the ceiling, they found a man who looked very unkempt, tattered and torn, looked malnourished, looked dejected and rejected, looked like somebody who was, excuse me to say, a mad person roaming the streets, as you may have seen in some places on the streets in Africa. This was how the man looked. But he was not roaming on the streets, he was actually in the ceiling of Gogo Mahlahla's house. So, just like that, the case had now escalated from Gogo Mahlahla living with the corpse of her dead husband to now also having an unidentified man who seems demented, crazy, and unkempt, hiding or living in her ceiling. The investigations would prove that this person was actually Gogo Mahlahla's son, who has been identified subsequently as Grant. So again, police reached out to neighbors because in Africa, the neighbors have all the information, or at least most of it, and they will peddle the juiciest gossip and grapevine. The neighbors in Africa keep the wheels of grapevine and gossip turning very smoothly. So the police reached out to them, and information gathered from the neighbors was that the last time they saw Grant was over 14 years ago. They didn't even know that Grant was actually still in that house because Gogo Mahlahla has 5 kids and they are all outside the country, or 4 of them they knew were outside the country. And the last time they saw Grant was 14 years ago. So they didn't even know that as at that day he was in the house, or as at several years leading up after the 14 years they last saw him, that Grant was actually still in this house. So imagine the mystery. This woman is living with her dead corpse, the corpse of her husband, sorry, and it turns out her son, who looks crazy, demented, is also living in the ceiling of the same house. What was going on in that house? What was Gogo Mahlahla hiding? What was the point of all this? What was she hoping to achieve? These were the mind-boggling questions that police were now tasked to solving. Neighbors had confirmed that the last time they saw Grant was over 14 years ago, and because, like I mentioned earlier, Gogo Mahlahla was not allowing anybody access into the house. They couldn't know what was actually going on inside the house itself because everything in there had now been shrouded in a cloak of secrecy because of how Gogo Mahlahla was running things in her house as far as her neighbors are concerned. So police conveyed the corpse of her husband to the mortuary for autopsy and other things, and then also handcuffed Grant, the unkempt and suspicious looking person who would later turn out to be identified as the son of Gogo Mahlahla, was handcuffed by the police and then transported to the police station. And reports indicated that he was handcuffed because police were unsure at the time whether he is violent or not. Further investigations will reveal the following. 1. The man was actually Gogo Mahlahla's son, Grant, who was 39 years old as at the time of this story being made. Grant has since had a haircut and he seems, at least per his looks, to be returning to normalcy, and actually has had some Zimbabwean ladies admiring him. Well, that is the crazy bit of it. In all this chaos, you still have some people being able to admire this man. And for Gogo Mahlahla, she has still not been able to explain why she decided to keep her husband's corpse days, several days for that matter, after he had died. Now, when she was arraigned before court for the first time, she came there with a bag. Nobody knew what was in the bag. But then, during proceedings, she asked to go to the washroom, and a police officer decided to accompany her. Whilst there, the police officer chanced upon Gogo Mahlahla actually having the nails of her son Grant in that bag, and the whole case just keeps evolving and getting more twisted and leaving several question marks, because Then what is she doing with the nails of her son in that bag? It's almost as though there's something occultic going on here, which of course has not been confirmed, but it's weird to me. Let me know if it's not weird to you, or if you have a suspicion of what is actually going on here. Because, one, for starters, your husband has died and you decide to keep him there, keep his corpse in your house. So it starts decomposing before you go to the police and report that your husband has died. Two, how is it that your son has been living in the ceiling of your house for, if what residents say are correct, over 14 years, and he looks like a madman? And three, what are you doing with the nails of your son? What has that got to do with anything? Why do you have them in that bag? What are you going to use it for? All these were questions that were boggling the intellects of the police. And obviously, one of the legal options that they had was to recommend her for a psychiatric evaluation to determine whether she's actually sane and is aware of what she's doing. And as at the time of making this report or this video, Gogo Mahlahla has been certified and cleared as being medically fit to stand trial. So she knew what she was doing, at least per the clearance. She knew what she was doing. And I'm following this case closely. When the trial starts, I'm hoping we can get more insight to understand why somebody would do this. It's so odd, it's so strange. We are also yet to know the autopsy reports or results on the cause of death of her husband. I hope that can also be established. Personally, I feel that there are serious plots of this case that are yet to come out, and when they do, everything is going to make sense. Leave your comments in the comment section. What do you think is at play here? Although we wait to find out what the facts will be when the trial begins and what further investigations will unravel. Let me know if you've seen this case or any familiar thing like this somewhere, wherever you are. Let's share some thoughts, let's share some ideas. If you are yet to subscribe to this channel, please do so. And for my returning subscribers, thank you so much. I appreciate your support. You guys have helped us to reach 300 subscribers, and we don't take that for granted. Please subscribe to our channel, share the video links with the people in your circles. True crime channels are meant to give you insight into the minds of criminals and also to help you err on the side of safety. And True Crimes Cafe, as you are well aware, is unrelenting in the pursuit of this objective. We care about you. Help our message to go that far. And as usual, keep an eye out and stay safe out there.